Hi, I'm Heather Marie Montilla, and you're watching PBS Books. Thank you for joining us. PBS Books, in collaboration with KPBS in San Diego, is pleased to host a conversation with author Donielle Clayton in celebration of the Library of Congress National Book Festival. PBS Books is proud to partner with the Library of Congress to promote their 2022 Library of Congress National Book Festival. Let's take a moment to hear from Dr. Carla Hayden, who is the librarian at the Library of Congress.
Books bring us together as the Library of Congress National Book Festival returns in person on September 3rd at the Washington Convention Center. The festival is free for readers of all ages. We will also be live streaming 3 stages for audiences across the country. Featured authors this year include Janelle Monáe, Leslie Jordan, Niall DeMarco, Nick Offerman, Angie Thomas, and more. So go to loc.gov/bookfest for more.
Well, that is quite a lineup, and we hope everyone will be able to take advantage of the 2022 Library of Congress National Book Festival. We know it is very far for those of you in San Diego and from many other places throughout the United States. But if you're able to get there, don't forget it starts at 9 a.m. and it goes until 8 p.m. The festival is free and open to everyone. For a complete schedule, you can go to loc.gov/bookfest. But if you can't get there in person, don't fret. You can live stream it and curate your own experience from the comfort of your home or even out and about on your cell phone. Now through August 31st, PBS Books and PBS stations across the country will host a series of 10 virtual events with 11 authors. This is the 8th event. It is the 7th event. My apologies. They will be available on demand on PBS Books and the National Book Festival website. Well, let's take a moment to hear from our partner, KPBS, Janelle Dean.
Thanks, Heather. Hello, everyone. I'm Janelle Dean, KPBS Community Engagement Manager, and I'm thrilled to be here to introduce this evening's event with author Donielle Clayton in celebration of the Library of Congress National Book Festival. I am proud that KPBS is committed to sharing the voices of contemporary authors. The Library of Congress National Book Festival theme this year is Books Bring Us Together. There is no question that books do just that. For over 2 decades, the Library of Congress National Book Festival has brought hundreds of thousands of people to DC, and we are delighted to help amplify the Library of Congress's important work. On the local level, KPBS, along with more than 80 public libraries, service organizations, and educational institutions, bring our own community together through the shared experience of reading and discussing the same book. The One Book, One San Diego program, now in its 16th year, has book fans participating from across San Diego and Imperial counties and Baja California. The tremendous reach and success of this program is the result of the work of our fabulous program partners. One of the many reasons we are thrilled to partner with PBS Books is because of its partnership with libraries, as libraries are a crucial partner for KPBS and other PBS stations across the country. We're excited to have recently announced the book selections for this year's One Book, One San Diego program, and we'd like to share them with you today. We also invite you to check back with us as this year's author events will be hybrid. So even if you're not living in our region, you can still join us.
KPBS and our community partners celebrate 16 years of One Book, One San Diego by announcing the 2022 selections. For kids, We Are Water Protectors by Carol Lindstrom and illustrated by Michaela Godey is inspired by Indigenous-led movements across North America. It issues an urgent rallying cry to safeguard the Earth's water. For teens, The Magic Fish by Trung Le Nguyen follows a first-generation Vietnamese-American boy as he navigates life through fairy tales. It explores the complexity of family and how stories can bring us together. For adults, The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett is a story that considers the lasting influence of the past and explores why people sometimes feel pulled to live as something other than their origins. To learn more, visit kpbs.org/onebook.
We are excited to share Black, Asian, LGBTQ, and Indigenous voices through our One Book, One San Diego program this year. We are just as excited to talk with author Dhonielle Clayton this evening about Blackout, a novel which showcases 6 critically acclaimed, best-selling, and award-winning authors. This work brings the glowing warmth and electricity of Black teen love through interlinked, charming, hilarious, and heartwarming stories that shine a bright light through the dark. Please stay with us as we discuss Blackout and Dhonielle's work to increase the representation of marginalized groups in children and young adult literature. Back to you, Heather.
Thank you, Janelle. Thank you so much. And we're so proud to partner with KPBS and so excited to hear more about One Book, One San Diego. So we always like to thank our library partners across the country, more than 1,800 strong, as well as numerous PBS stations across our nation, for sharing this important content with all of you. But most importantly, we'd like to thank all of you for joining us. Well, now the moment you've been waiting for, it is my pleasure to introduce Dhonielle Clayton. Dhonielle is a New York Times bestselling author of the Marvelers series and Bella series, Shattered Midnight, co-author of Blackout, Whiteout, The Rumor Game, and of the Tiny Pretty Things duology, a Netflix original series. She hails from the Washington, D.C. suburbs on the Maryland side. She taught secondary school for several years and is a former elementary and middle school librarian. She is the chief operating officer of the nonprofit We Need Diverse Books and president of Cake Creative, an IP story kitchen dedicated to diverse books for all ages. She's an avid traveler and always on the hunt for magic and mischief. It is my pleasure to welcome Dhonielle.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, we're so glad to have you. And to co-moderate the conversation, it's my pleasure to introduce Addie Huertas. Addie Huertas grew up in the library, first while learning English as a preteen, and then at 16 serving as library aide at the San Diego Public Library. She celebrates 25 years with the system this year. Huertas conceptualized, wrote, implemented an Institute of Museum and Library Services grant to create Books for Good Trouble, social justice dialogues, which highlights Black, Indigenous, and people of color authors and conversations regarding social justice issues impacting the San Diego community by partnering with local schools and several equity, diversity, and inclusion-focused community groups to ensure a broad reach. It is my pleasure to welcome Addie. I'm so sorry, Addie.
That is fine. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Addie, it is so great to have you. And, I was so excited to learn about your background and your history and the work you've done and your path at the San Diego Library. And I was hoping that you could talk a little bit about that work before we jump into our larger conversation.
Yes, I mean, I fortunately have been able to have a wonderful career here at the San Diego Public Library and never left because there have been numerous opportunities. But I think for me, library has played a key role in my development in public service. I feel like that is something that is at the core, and particularly for me, that's where I learned English. I learned English at the library. So having that connection, having that resource, but being able to give back and to engage our community, our Spanish-speaking community, our Latinx community, our LGBTQ plus community and our BIPOC community, those are always front and center for me. And I have just had the pleasure to be able to develop programs and partnerships and collaborations throughout the city to be able to bring forth some of these important conversations. And what a great opportunity to have those conversations started and fostered through books, through themes. I mean, I'm just a nerd myself, of course, and I love the fact that we can engage folks and we can start those conversations through books that represent us as community.
No doubt. I think one of the exciting things for me about the Library of Congress National Book Festival this year is the ability on September 3rd to be able to access so much of the content on that day, streaming it. And the authors they've included are from a diversity of backgrounds, genres, and everyone will be able to really see it then. And then also over 2 weeks, all of the content from the whole convention that day, the whole festival will be available. So hopefully some of that will also help to spark young people, because I do think education and reading, it starts with the love of reading. Even math, you need to read. Everything is reading. And it's so wonderful as we think of libraries as gathering places, but they will also be such a cornerstone, a rock, a foundation of education for our full community. So we're so excited to have you and excited to welcome in our guest, Donielle. Addie, do you want to start with the first question?
Yes, welcome, Donielle. So great to have you again. And we'll get started with our conversation. Our first question for our audience to learn more is, could you give us a summary of Blackout and what Blackout is about?
Sure. It's about 13 teens in New York City, and it's a hot summer day and the lights go out. And they're all stuck in various places in New York trying to figure out how to get to this party in Brooklyn that they all have decided to go to. But each teen is stuck with someone that they may or may not like or have something to tell them, and so on. So they're each navigating some drama, their own relationship dynamic, while the city has sort of come to a halt, and as they're trying to all get to this party.
So as I read your book, as someone who lived in New York City in 2003, when there was that major blackout, I couldn't help but wonder how the idea for Blackout came about, and if you or one of the other authors were living in New York City at that moment in time.
Sure. So Tiffany D. Jackson is our real New Yorker. She's born and raised. Also, Nicola Yoon lived in New York. I live in New York now. I've been here 13 years, so I'm a fake New Yorker. Ashley Woodfolk has lived here for a while too. And so the idea for Blackout came from a couple of things. One, I have a 16-year-old niece. When she was 14 and 15, we were watching all of the teen programming and reading all of YA books and watching how they were getting adapted to the small screen and the big screen. And she asked me a question. She said, why don't Black girls get big love stories? Why are they always sidekicks? Why aren't they the stars? Right. So that was like upsetting to me as a writer and as someone who loves her and wants her to see herself. And then the pandemic hit. So we had that conversation in December of 2019. Then the pandemic came down upon New York and the world and everywhere in the spring. New York shut down in March. And so we were all struggling. Publishing had come to a halt. Everything in the city had come to a halt. I'm in my 1-bedroom apartment in Harlem, listening to sirens all night because I live near the hospital, and thinking about what teens probably were feeling at this time too. Schools were shut down. They were at home. People were trying to figure out how do we get them online to keep their learning. And I thought about how their lives were about to change for the next several years. And all of my friends who are writers, we were all stressed out. And I thought, this is what it feels like. I feel like the world has blacked out. I feel like cities across the world, I feel like our communities have come to a halt. But we've got to give these kids hope that they can find something exciting after when the lights come back on, right? And what are they going to do in the dark right now? And so that's how Blackout was born. Also, we were watching America grapple with police violence against Black people. And on the news, we were seeing Black bodies being brutalized. And I thought there's more to the story here. We've got to remind teens, especially they're going to inherit this place from us, that there is more to their community and their culture than just that, even though that is something that is sent all around the world. So we thought, let's write a big love story to New York, a love story to Black love, a love story to Black teens, and remind them that there is something there for them after all of this.
Incredible.
Danielle, the novel was a collaboration with authors that you mentioned earlier, Tiffany D. Jackson, Angie Thomas, Nick Stone, Ashley Woodfolk, and Nicola Yoon. How did that come about?
Sure. I'm glad they're not here because they would try to tell me that I'm going to tell a lie, but they say that they were bullied. I just called and said, hey, I have an idea. We're all very stressed out. We should, and all of our readers are stressed out too. We should write a big love story together. One, to give us something positive to focus on that was outside of our own individual deadlines. Two, to come together and show everyone what we meant when we said, like, we want to write about love and how love is just as important as all the other things. And so they would say that I bullied them into this, but really I was persuasive and I have leadership skills, you know, being a former librarian and teacher. And it was really easy to get them excited about writing about love in a blackout.
I'm going to start using that. It's my leadership skills when I persuade folks. I love that. I love that.
And if anyone calls you bossy or wrote that on your report card or in the notes, those are leadership skills. That's what my dad.
Yes, yes. And my next question, out of curiosity, was, were you bullying your friends? Were you all friends prior to this collaboration? Or is this how you came together?
Sure. So Nicola Yoon and I debuted together. So in 2015, both of our first books came out. My first book was Tiny Pretty Things. Her first book was Everything, Everything. So we were the two Black women in YA that were published that year. And so we were thick as thieves. So we met and I adore her. And so that's how our friendship came to be. Then in 2017, we had Tiffany D. Jackson, Nick Stone, and Angie Thomas were published. And as soon as I saw them, I was like, oh, come to me. We've got to be friends. And then Ashley Woodfolk was 2018. And so we all, because there are so few in the young adult world and in the children's books, so few Black women writing, we sort of glom together and try to make sure we take care of each other. And so these became some of my closest friends. And during the pandemic, they were the people I was talking to all the time, you know, trying to get back to my desk, telling people, okay, we got to write through this. We've got to figure it out. And so that's how this sort of organically came about. And they all have a superpower that I really respect as writers.
What does it look like, a collaborative? I mean, do you have a Google Doc? And had this been done before in this way, right? Is there a model you followed, or were there other people who collaborated in such a way that you talked to? Hey, you know, how did you collaborate on a book with 6 of you? Is there?
You want my trade secrets? You want my secrets?
I want them all.
I mean, I've co-authored before, but this was like a bigger kind of thing. And there are other authors who have done novellas together within a book. Like there's a collection of novellas called Let It Snow. And so it's not uncommon. It's just that there are 6 of us, so it feels sort of weird. And people mislabel this as an anthology versus as a novel, because when there are 6 of us, they think this must be a collection of sorts. And it is and it isn't. So I'm an architect, right? And I like to do all kinds of different kinds of storytelling. And what I did was I looked at other people who had written collaboratively, and I thought, how can I change the model? How can I make this feel cinematic? How can I make this feel like we're all integrated together, our stories? So we had a Google Doc, and in that Google Doc, we just broke down. It was really, really easy actually, because we used the path of the sun. We started when the sun was out, and we would end, the sun goes down, and then we would end at night. And so we used that as sort of a governing principle for how things would go. And then we used Manhattan as inspiration, and what does it look like to walk from one part of Manhattan to the other and into Brooklyn? And so we just plotted the stories along the route and passed the baton, so to speak, so that it could feel very much like a movie, like where the camera was, where the camera would be. The camera opens up in Harlem at the Apollo with Tiffany D. Jackson's characters, and you get to follow those characters throughout, and the other chapters weave into that stitching. So there is a backbone for the story, which are two characters, Kareem and Tammy, that you get to see walking. But as they pass by certain landmarks, the story camera switches to other characters, but they're all interconnected. And so we had a big text group chat, and I think we got on Zoom maybe once to troubleshoot a couple of big ideas and brainstorm, but otherwise it was really done via Google Docs and email.
Was there a final editor, or the editor was the publisher? Like, did one of you take that leadership role, that bossy role, and say
that would be me? And so I'm so glad they're not here, because they would slander me. Because I came up with the concept and I arranged it, I just would oversee sort of and stitching everything together and reading it from that editorial point of view and making sure we had everything. And we had two non-New Yorkers in the collection, Nick Stone and Angie Thomas. And so I was helping them. We placed them in places where I felt like they could nail it, even as non-New Yorkers, and do enough research to make it feel authentic.
Awesome.
So yes, I was the boss.
I love it. And you mentioned a little bit about this in the beginning, but unfortunately, we still do not see a lot of Black love stories. And when we see these teen love stories in movies or in books, there's hardly ever any BIPOC characters, Black characters. So how did that feel for you and your inner teen self to be writing this book, from this perspective?
Well, I wrote what I wanted to see. I wrote what I wish that my niece could see, where girls who look like her are the love interest. And so it feels radical, but it's not. I'm writing my experience. I'm writing my community. I'm writing who I am. And what was exciting was that we got to show the diversity within the Black experience, especially in New York, right? And I was a librarian in New York, and all of my students were Black and brown kids from first and second generation from all over the place. And so I was really committed. We were really committed to making sure that there was Caribbean representation. So you have Jamaican characters, you have Haitian characters, you also have Afro-Latinx characters. The love interest in my chapter is Colombian. And that was important to me because most of my students were Afro-Latinx. And we never got to see these Black kids speaking Spanish and living their best lives in New York. And so we were really committed to making sure that we could get that texture in there to show that it's not a monolith, that there are different pockets within the community, but it's all a celebration of everyone together, because that's how I feel like New York is.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. We need more.
Yes.
And we'll talk about more, hopefully, towards the end of the conversation. Just a reminder for those of you who are just joining us, I'm Heather Marie Montilla. You are watching PBS Books. It's my pleasure to be here with Addie Huertas, who is from the San Diego Public Library. And we are here with featured guest, Donielle Clayton, who is a co-author of this fabulous book, Blackout. And just a reminder, it is a YA novel, but I think one of the things that we'll talk about at some point, and if not, you heard it from me right now, which is YA is not just for young adults anymore. Everyone is reading YA. And I think that's even what's so exciting about the YA genre, is that it's really opened up, that I find people all the way up are reading it. And it's this, if you love New York, and even if you don't, New York is all around you in your commercials and TV shows. You'll be able in this book to be like, oh my gosh, that's right down the street from there, or that's right on the road to Brooklyn. As a former New Yorker who used to walk home from work from downtown near Soho all the way uptown. You get to see that in this book, and it's super fun. So Okay, back to the conversation. So, I thought we could talk a little bit about your story, all the great love stories and dust. And it takes place at the New York Public Library, which I love. And I was kind of taken by your footnotes. And at first, when I was reading your footnotes, I was thinking, is this Donielle talking or is this the character talking? And what's happening here? And your first footnote was like truth. And all of them they're telling you the truth, kind of like the inner thoughts, right? And I loved it because it was truth. I've never had a love story. Only 1 in 562 people find love. I read this and I was like, oh my gosh, that's disastrous, And then, it goes on to say about, I think finding love is as rare as finding identical snowflakes. And that was the clincher, and it was so perfect. And then, so I wanted to ask you about your footnotes, if you could talk a little bit about them, because I think they're so wonderful. I love that they're the truth, but how do you get the idea? And if you could share about them.
Sure. So yes, mine is in the New York Public Library. I claimed that as my place for my story, for my chapter, because obviously I'm the librarian in the crew. And I find the library to be this magical place. And I'm writing about a character, Lana, who has a lot to say, but sometimes doesn't have the courage to say it. And so she and her best friend, Tristan, they're always arguing, and they're always at odds. And they have bets going on between them about who can do X, Y, and Z thing the best. And it's their little friendship quirk that they have. And so they're in the New York Public Library and trying to figure out what is the best book ever written. That is the challenge. And so, but Lana has something to tell her best friend, and she's not sure how to do it. And so I wanted to write about kids whose anxieties prevent them from being emotionally available, being able to verbalize how they actually feel. And the fact that I think that teens are sort of given messages about swallowing sort of their more complicated emotions and being afraid to love. And so I was that kind of kid. I wasn't a kid that if I liked someone, I would have told them. And I wanted to sort of use that inspiration of me at 15 and 16, who would have the truth roll running in their head versus the things that I would say when I'm feeling vulnerable. I wanted to model that so that we can start talking about that in teenagehood. How it feels to actually tell the truth to someone and be vulnerable and open up the fact that it's something that has to be taught and modeled because it's not something that we naturally learn. So Lana's footnotes really come from that sort of inner monologue that I feel like a lot of teens have, where they're really just trying to protect their heart. And so I was that kind of kid. So that's where that came from. My journal was full of the truth.
I love it. And now I have to ask the librarian question as the librarian in the group here. And, my librarian friend here, what part have libraries? I'm assuming that New York Public Library, probably the main library, was probably one of your favorite places. It is. But what part have libraries played in your path as an author? Can you expand on that?
Sure. If there were no libraries, I wouldn't be here. I think that libraries and librarians are the lighthouses for community. And so I went to the library probably 3 to 4 times a week as a child. I was very spoiled. I was a bookworm. All I wanted to do was read. I was an indoor cat. If I could just be under a table with books, with something to drink, preferably pink lemonade and some cookies, I was a happy little camper. And my dad was the same exact way. So I would go to the library almost every single day, if not 3 to 4 times a week. And then I would go to the bookstore on Saturdays with my dad every Saturday. Bookstore, comic book store. It was our routine. And so libraries were a place where I was introduced to my first friends, right? Harriet the Spy, the Westing game, the Phantom Toll Booth, all of these things that built my little girl imagination. So think of Matilda, but like Lavender in the movie, a little black girl with little glasses, with a stack of books. And I loved it. I loved being able to escape into that. And I grew up in the suburbs. It was very boring. And so I was looking for adventure, and I could find that in books. And so my librarian became the center of my universe, because every time I would march in there, not able to even see over, over the counter, she would be ready for me because I was reading 5 to 10 books a week. I was obsessed with books and obsessed with reading. And I even loved going in and just smelling the books. I still love to smell books. It's one of the things I missed during the pandemic, just being able to go and crack open a book and smell the glue in the paper. So libraries are so important to me. And it's why I became a school librarian and why I loved it so much.
I love that. And I love that your librarian was ready for you, because I mentioned earlier that I was a book nerd, but I was not always that book nerd. It wasn't until I started reading the right books, right? And there was that conduit, and the library staff were those conduits to getting to those books that really spoke to me, and where I could see myself reflected. So I just think that's just so lovely, and it's such an important role. And I'm not saying this as a librarian, but even for us, reluctant readers that become book nerds, to have the right books on hand and the folks that can kind of point you to those resources.
It's a superpower. We're pretty awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, good. We'll toot our horns. Yes.
We should toot our horns, especially with librarians having to face angry mobs now, having their jobs in jeopardy, having to suffer harassment, and still being like, we have to make sure kids get books. We have to make sure people get books. This is not a place for that. And having to be the front lines of this big conversation that's happening.
Absolutely.
Well, and I would almost add even the importance of how librarians' roles have changed so much, even in terms of media literacy, right? It's not only access, but it's also being able to decipher, a lot of teens get their news from TikTok, right? And so understanding what's true, what's not true, and being able to navigate that in that space is so important. And librarians are in the thick of it. And I feel like during the pandemic, librarians were the front line. They were the first responders in a lot of ways, not to diminish what everyone did, but librarians were constantly making sure that seniors were served, and there was so much there. And I just really have so much respect for all of our librarians out there. To get back to the book of topic and the chapter that Donielle wrote. So I was super interested in why, out of all of the children's books that could have been chosen for Tristan to hold up, he chose Dr. Seuss, Green Eggs and Ham, and how you made that choice. And then because you were able to then point out, right, some of the racism and some issues within that. So how did you make that choice, and what response have you received?
So I made that choice for many reasons. I've never been asked this question, so I'm so excited to talk about it. Number one, I feel like Dr. Seuss and his body of work is injected into every classroom across the world, right? The books sell so much, right? So much so that the shadow that he takes up can oftentimes eclipse a lot of other BIPOC creators writing picture books that are just as clever and whimsical and fun and exciting, right? So it's about people's sort of nostalgia creeping in, me wanting to have a conversation about that, and also wanting to sort of discuss Dr. Seuss's legacy and how complicated it is. I did it also because one of the first times that I got a death threat and hate mail was when I went on NPR and I was talking about the Dr. Seuss Museum, and I was asked a question as chief operating officer of We Need Diverse Books about whether or not his racist cartoons depicting caricatures of Asian people should be put into a mural and should be sort of a teachable lesson. And I got frustrated because I feel like when BIPOC people become, and queer people and disabled people become teachable lessons or case studies, it's frustrating to me. And so I wanted to start having that conversation because I think teens are starting to become aware of the children's books that they read as young people, as indoctrination tools, as pieces of media that create caricature, that create problems. And I wanted to sort of slip that in as an opening conversation that I don't know if many teens have been able to start pointing that out. I think the next generation of teens is way more savvy than we are. And so I think they're starting to understand that. And so I wanted to sort of poke a little bit naughty here, poke the bear. And Dr. Seuss is a lightning rod for many, many folks. I have fond memories of his books as well. But I think my thing is, we don't have to, I'm not advocating, I'm an archivist, I'm a librarian, to take them off the shelves. It's just, I'm ready to move on. And so I was trying to showcase that, like, nostalgia keeps us from moving forward and introducing new voices to young people.
Absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right. Teens are, I think this next generation, they're starting those conversations and starting to notice it more and pointing it out, which I appreciate very, very much. But yeah, so 100%. And I want to move a little bit into the novel. What do you think is the most important takeaway for the novel? And is that takeaway, or the goal of that takeaway, the same for BIPOC youth?
I think the biggest takeaway for Blackout is that every teen deserves a love story if they want one. And love stories look and feel and sound different for every person. And so we wanted to showcase many different kinds of teens with many different kinds of fears, hesitations, and how they can find connection and find love. And so we were really invested in making sure that we could showcase all the different ways to find connection, and to remind every teen that they are loved and that they deserve love. So especially Black teens, it's something that they don't get reinforced often. So that was our big mission.
So there was a 12-way auction between different companies to win the rights to your book in North America. Mm-hmm. What was that like? That sounds like a lot.
It was a whirlwind. We sent it out on an afternoon in August. Like, we're coming up, I think it was this week, those in 2020. And within 30 minutes, we had an offer. And we sent out the entire novel. We wrote the entire novel together as our sort of big statement before we went out. This wasn't a proposal. It wasn't saying we were going to. We wrote the entire thing on a hope and a dream that a publisher would be excited. And yes, it went to auction, and it was very intense and very heated, and very hard to choose, because we all have different publishing partners and editors. So it was very exciting. It was a career highlight for me to know that our love story, our big love story to New York, our big love story to Black love and Black teens could get this much excitement.
That is amazing. I think we are all excited. Mm-hmm. And kind of along those lines, it was reported that Blackout would be adapted by the Obama's production company into a film series for Netflix. Congratulations. And that is also very exciting. What was that experience like, getting a call from the Obama production company saying that they want to adapt your book to the screen? Will you be involved in the screenwriting? Can you give us any updates on that?
Sure. So the Obamas are making it into a film and a TV series at the same time. So you'll get both. And it was wild. Again, just like the 13 house auction or the bidders, I had to take about 30 calls from Hollywood about this project, which is like champagne problems and super exciting. And so when my brilliant film agent, Mary Pinder, called me and said, sit down. And I said, what do you mean sit down? She said, sit down. You might want to lay down, because the news that I'm about to give to you you might fall. So I did so. And she said, the Obamas want to make this into a TV show and a film. And I just started screaming. And then I had to call all of the other women. And so each one of them was screaming. Angie Thomas had to pull over on the side of the road, because I said, you're driving, I need you to pull over, and then I'll tell you what I need to tell you. So President Obama Michelle Obama are our heroes, and they are the epitome of Black love to us. So to have them ushering this in is super excited. We are involved. So and we have our showrunner, which I can't tell you who it is yet. And she is incredible. And yeah, I'm really excited for you all to see what's going to come about from this and what they're making. I think it's going to be really beautiful and fun.
I would have had a big accident. I got chills just hearing like how excited you were, but I'm like, yeah, I probably would have crashed.
It was even worse to tell my parents because they were like, wait, what? And I said, just sit down. Let me explain. Tiffany D. Jackson couldn't tell her mom until the day before it went live because she said that Caribbean parents send out a CNN alert to everyone in the island as well. And so she said she was afraid it would leak. So her mom was mad. She was the last mom to know. So.
I think that was a good call. I can relate to that. That was definitely a good call. It would have been on blast.
On blast in every community. So she blamed the Jamaicans. And I said, oh, man.
Can you talk a little bit, right? So we've been talking about your book, but I know your work with We Need Diverse Books and also with Kate Creative. Can you talk about your work in those two realms and what it means to you and how it complements your work as a writer?
Sure. So I was just a little librarian in East Harlem, New York, trying to get my kids excited to read. And this was before We Need Diverse Books kicked off in 2014 with a viral tweet. And I was having a hard time getting my students invested in literacy or help their literacy rates and then get them invested in literature the way I was because they weren't seeing themselves on the pages of stories. Or if they were, it was pressing down on the bruises of their collective backgrounds, which if that's all you see in books, you might not want to read that either. If every time you see a book that features a Black kid, it's about slavery and civil rights. We need these books. It's about more. It's about and. And so I got involved with We Need Diverse Books with L&O and started helping her run the organization and trying to make real sustainable change in publishing to make sure every kid gets to walk into a bookstore, walk into their public library, their classroom library, and see themselves as the hero of a story and see people who don't look like them as the hero of a story, how important that is to build empathy and build bridges between communities. And so we've been working on so many programs to help change lots of different things that publishing touches, from helping teachers and librarians know what diverse titles to bring in their books for discoverability, bring into their libraries for discoverability, from helping publishers finding the right staff, helping people stay in publishing, which is notoriously in the most expensive city in the world, which is New York City, helping them stay here and thrive and such. And then also helping parents find books and support, and helping writers break into the industry, whether it is through workshops, grants, etc. And so that dovetails into my work as president of Kate Creative, which is what's called an IP story kitchen, which means intellectual property. I have a lot of stories because I was a little kid who was reading a ton, and I decided that I would give pieces of my own stories away to other people and teach them what I know, send the elevator back down, teach them how books are made. It took me 8 books to break into the industry, and I wanted to try to create a pipeline that was faster than that, because I won't be able to get books on the shelves that reflect the experiences of my students if I don't bring in authors that actually have that lived experience, writing things that are really exciting to them, fantasy books. And all of that was inspired by, I had a little kid come into my library and she asked me for books about witches. And she had one parent from Mexico and one parent from the Dominican Republic. And I said, I got her all the books on witches. And then she came back and she said, no, I want brujas. And at the time, there wasn't a single book that had a bruja in it for middle grade readers and elementary school readers. And I got really angry. And when I get really angry, I get busy. And so I decided to package that and put that together and find a writer from that community and write a book. And that's where a series called Love, Sugar, Magic came from, which came from my brain about a magical family of Mexican brujas who run a bakery in small town Texas, and a little girl who makes havoc of it. And so I just felt like so many of my students were asking for fun stories, exciting stories that featured them, and I couldn't find it for them. So that's where it all comes from. It comes from those little readers coming in and pressing me and asking me for certain kinds of books, and me not being able to provide those and feeling devastated by it and feeling like they were their imaginations were being changed because they couldn't see themselves and stunted in a particular way.
Well, I can't help but think that we're so lucky that you got frustrated. And and I also, when I was reading your longer bio, right, I couldn't help but think that you had this pivotal moment. You said that I think you failed the chemistry, and that kind of made you completely leave pre-med, which I'm sorry. I was similar, so I understand what it feels like. But that pivotal moment gave us you, and you were such a trailblazer, and you're making so many amazing changes, not just through your work, but in the field of publishing and for our future, for our kids. And so I want to thank you. And just also say, do you ever wonder like about that moment and that decision? Because I think so many people out there sometimes have that pivotal moment and they're afraid to jump. But you took that leap, and look where you are now.
Right. It's so funny. So I went to Wake Forest University in North Carolina, and I was pre-med, and I was like, I'm going to be the first doctor in the family. And then I took chemistry, and it was my first F. And so I went to Catholic school in Maryland. I was pretty much a 4.0 GPA, like give or take. So I was a nerd. I had the grades, and this was the first time that I had failed something, like really outright failed, even when I studied, even when I had a tutor, did all of those things. My brain was just not connecting with the material in that way. And my parents told me that failures are signs of effort and progress. And they told me to figure it out, that they didn't send me to college to fail. So if pre-med wasn't bringing me joy and I was feeling like I was struggling, to figure out what it is that I wanted to do with my life. And being away from home, I'm a spoiled brat and a rotten egg, which is my childhood nickname. And so I was really depressed being so far from home and having to use communal showers and being the spoiled brat stereotype. And so what I did was I went to the bookstore and I started getting the books that I read as a young person that brought me comfort. And I started rereading them. And I was doing really well in my English classes. And I thought, maybe I'll be a teacher or a librarian because I love books if I can't be a doctor. And so then I started going down that path, and I thought, I really love working with kids. I've always liked working with kids. And so I did that for many years. But as soon as I got to New York, and I realized that so many kids who look like me weren't falling in love with books the way that I was, and it was affecting their literacy rates, I was like, okay, I've got to figure out how to do something that can help them get excited and help set them on their way. And so that failure in chemistry, that career path change led me to teaching. Then it led me to being a librarian, which then led me to becoming a writer. And so I never wanted to be a writer growing up. I just really loved books and stories and film and TV. And I was obsessed with listening to stories. We had to listen to a book on tape on the way to school every day. So I was surrounded by it. I just never thought it was a career path that I could have. So moving to New York really sort of changed my life, and being in a library full of children with demands who just want magic and who look like me and who deserve magic. That was the sort of the tender that I needed to do this work.
You became the magician.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So we want to know more. What do you plan on writing? Any other young adult fiction novels? Is that in the works? Is that a plan? Or do you currently have anything in the works?
Yes. So lots of things. One, there is another book coming out by all of us, and it's on the back. It's called Whiteout. So it's another love story, but this time it's a puzzle. You won't know who wrote what. And there's a key at the end to see if you can figure it out. And it's set in Atlanta during a snowstorm. So we go from blackout, we go from the heat to now to the cold with Whiteout. And all of these different teens are stuck during this blizzard, but they're all trying to help one of their very close friends because she has messed up. And she has to do what's called in romance tropes, the grovel, and figure out how to get her girlfriend back. And so that one comes out on November 8th, and we're very, very excited. And we're headed on tour, all 6 of us. So there'll be announcements for you to catch us on the road. Also, I have my middle grade debut, which is called The Marvelers, which is my answer to Magic School. What does Magic School look like when all of the children of the world are considered, right, as magic wielders? And what happens when we all come together and live with our magic in the sky? So the Magic School is in the sky. So this is my answer to the Magic School trope in middle grade. And so I am currently working on that series. And then I have another YA out next year, which I haven't talked about yet, but it's in one of my existing series. And so it's going to announce very soon.
I'm so happy that you brought up Whiteout, and both of those sound amazing. And if the tour is anywhere near California, San Diego area, let me know.
We'll know very soon.
I'll be on the lookout as well.
Well, so we are here together because of the Library of Congress National Book Festival. Is this your first time, Donielle, going?
I believe so. Everything before the coronavirus pandemic, I can't remember. And I think this is the first time that I will be on stage and interacting and signing. I've always wanted to go. I mean, I'm from the DMV. This is such a prestigious and wonderful festival. I remember hearing about it for years. So many of my friends go. So many librarians I know go, and families. So I'm so excited that I get to be important enough to be able to be on the main stage. I get to interview some other writers and also get to be with my Blackout crew. So it'll be so much fun. And I'm hoping that they'll have arcs of Whiteout. So if people want to get a sneak peek, they can come and get one. So I'm really excited to go. And it's a hometown for me. So my family will be there.
Well, it's so awesome that people can see you there and the other authors. It sounds like it is on the main stage, and that will be live streamed throughout the day. And so go to loc.gov/bookfest to find out the schedule. But I also have advice for you, which is there are so many events and you're going to be so busy. It's going to be a whirlwind. I know when I went for work in 2019 with PBS Books, I just was so disappointed that I looked at the schedule at noon. And I was like, oh my gosh, I missed all of these people I wanted to see. This year it'll be recorded, but plan ahead because it is incredible. And there's so many amazing authors. Everyone's so curious and friendly. It's just a fabulous celebration of reading and of books. So we're so happy for you and all of your successes. Just congratulations. You deserve it. And you are making such a difference in our world as well. And that is yay. This book is so much fun. I read your chapter and I was like, oh, even the competition, I have kids, I have a 12-year-old and a almost 15-year-old. And when they have a best friend and they're like, no, I'm better with a girl, I'm like, your best friend. I get it. Right. So, so it was really, really fun. And I loved it. So thank you so very much. We're so appreciative of your time. Addie, thank you for jumping in and doing this and representing San Diego, the library there.
I'm in great company here. This is lovely. Let's keep doing this.
Books and books.
Yes.
Super. So we are going to end. Just a reminder that PBS Books likes to remind everyone, September 3rd, the Library of Congress National Book Festival. Don't miss it. Go to loc.gov/bookfest. You can also catch our conversations that we're doing through the 31st. You can go to pbsbooks.org and enjoy. I'm Heather Marie Montilla, and until next time, happy reading.